Okay, folks, let's start. So today I will be a little fast. I need to cover a few topics. Um, and feel free to tell me if the pace is all right or you need me to slow down or topic is too boring. You have all the privileges to give your inputs. Okay, all right. So we'll cover the following things. We'll cover some aspect of security principle in the class today, and the next class will cover the remaining. Okay, and contents of this presentation I have taken only from one source, which is the textbook developed by his online textbook. This is available to all of you. Is available at University of Berkeley website. Okay, so actually there is no great textbook available. At least I find either they are too theoretical or they are primarily on hacking. So there's a reason different places, different universities are taking contents from various places, right? But this textbook covers some topics that will be studying in later classes, right? So wherever possible, I will take contents from here because it's beautifully written. Okay, all right. So security principle that we will discuss in the class today and next class are the following, right? These are some of the security principles. We will discuss this in very brief, and this forms a basis. Of course, we'll study more things as we go on in the course, but these are the basic ones, right? And from these, there are other things are derived. Okay, all right. So today we'll consider only these. Okay, and the later class, that's a class on Monday, we'll cover the following remaining ones, right? Okay. So before this, before we start the lecture, there's interesting article I found in one of the magazines that's called The Week, published from US. So it's a kind of old article, maybe 3-4 years old, and says that why World War III, if it happens, will be fought on the internet. Okay, it's very interesting article. It's not very long, maybe one page. Okay, and it says that it's very easy to do war on internet, and secondly the conventional war is very expensive because a lot of preparation, and use with cyber war one can do a lot of damage with low cost. Okay, the countries that are advanced in cyber war will be the winner in future. Okay, and there are many states or countries that have begun kind of preparation towards that. Okay, they're investing huge amount of money in cyber security, and we know the Israel is one such country that where the normal armed forces have a very large wing on cyber security, and that's the reason from this cyber security place, they start from the school and start training students on cyber security, and in 2-3 years when they complete military training and so on, they are available to industry. And there's a reason security industry in tiny country like Israel is number one in the world. Okay, so read this article. It will just open our eyes about importance of cyber security. And if you want to protect our organization or our country or ourselves, then knowing cyber security becomes very important. Okay, all right. So this email I received when I just logged into my system this morning. So it has come from somebody, Jane Liu. I don't know who is this guy. He says, hello, regular client. Thank you for being client, whatever. And then he says that your Norton, last package of Norton Protection 360 has expired. Okay, and you are supposed to pay renewal fee of this much, $295, and then mode of payment. Okay, how do I know this is a fraudulent mail?
Not from an official email of the company.
Yeah, so first thing is not an official email from them. Very good, excellent. This came from Gmail, so anybody can create this account and send. What is the second way to know that?
You haven't even taken the protection.
Grammatical mistakes in the email.
Pardon? I
Sir,
could.
he can't address you properly. He used hello regular client.
Very,
If it was the company who knew, it would address you with
very,
your name.
very good, excellent, very good point. What is the third point? Somebody said.
Grammatical mistakes in the email.
Grammatical mistakes in the email. That's also fine, but that can happen. But normally, when emails
So
are
one more, it sends the same message to all of these people.
very good,
And there are
very excellent. So normally these emails don't come to set of people. It usually comes to just individual, right? So we can find it out from all this. Okay. So we keep getting this is a kind of cyber fraud. Okay, and you won't believe that even today you would have received emails from Nigerian client, right? That my father has died. He was very rich, and I want to share wealth with many people in the world because I don't know what to do with money. And you are one of the good person I could find, and please come and take the money. And before that, you have to just some processing fee of something, $1,000 something required. And you think that all of us will possibly think that this is a fraud, right? Absolute fraud. Why should anybody share money, wealth? But you won't believe that I heard this year before last that at least 50 people were landing in Nigeria every day from all across the world to claim the whatever wealth. Okay, so and one of my friend's brother has also come from US to collect money in Nigeria. And you can't believe that. See, there are lot of people who just can't find out that this is a fraud, either because of their own foolishnesses or they are too simple or naive. Okay, nobody gives money for free. That's one thing until it's charity. Yeah, all right. Okay, so we have to apply this, and sometimes it's very easy to get fooled, right? I have been getting one call from one lady, and that was about that I have not claimed insurance money in one of the insurance companies, right? So and then I was also confused whether I have taken insurance of this company in the past, and then she says yes, this is the number you have taken, and so on and so forth. And then I realized this is 100% fraud. Then I said, what are the next steps? Next step is that she says give your account details. So no company does this, right? So they simply transfer money to your account. It's unclaimed money, or you have not claimed that. Okay, so sometimes it's very easy to get fooled. And then another call I have received from PF department, right? Government of India, this provident fund. So all of you will deposit money in provident fund as part of your salary, and at the end you'll have to claim that, right? And part of the money also remain with them, which is given to you every month, kind of pension kind. And I have not claimed that money. So I got a call, and then the person knew everything about me and how much money is there, right? And again the same trick that I said, what is the next step? And then said that you'll have to give details of bank account where it can be transferred, and then small processing fee is required. which you'll have deposited in some account. I said, okay, send the details of account, and this account happens to be in a bank, private bank, which is not SBI or anything, right? First thing is government doesn't ask for processing fee, and secondly, government always uses Government of India banks, which is a controlled bank like SBI and or many. So now we can find it out, right? And then when call consistently kept coming, so I passed on the number to cyber police. Okay, so we'll have to apply often that a lot of fraud goes on, and many people get fooled if they're not careful. Okay, so first thing is that threat modeling. Okay, threat modeling is that before we plan any security, we have to think about the threat and model it. As simple as that. Right? What does it mean when you're building a house? And when the house is totally made, then you can't plan security for it. You have to, right in the beginning, when you're discussing the design of house with the architect, you'll have to think of whether there will be fence, there will be gate, then what kind of locks, and so on and so forth, right? And in order to do that, you'll have to think that where do you live? If you live in Sweden, for example, or any other country, for example, Finland, you don't need security, and people don't, still there are areas where people don't put locks. Okay, level of ethical levels is quite high in those places. But if you're living in a place like Nigeria or maybe some other place, okay, then you have to think what kind of security you need to have. Okay, all right. So what kind of thefts can happen? What kind of intrusions can happen? And accordingly, you have to plan. Similarly, in computing system, when you're designing, you will have to think where all attacks can happen. Okay. Okay, so the model, so threat model is a model where you have to find out who your attacker is and what resources they have. How will they attack on you? Okay, and then it's a structured process with the following objectives. First thing is that when we do modeling, we'll have to find out what are our requirements. Our requirements may not be too much, right? If I live in a flat and I don't keep any valuables at home, my requirements are not really many. If I live in an independent house and there's nobody, no neighbors around and so on, then my requirements are different, right? So all the requirements, and similarly for systems, computing systems, we'll have to see what are the requirements, what kind of systems we have, what are we trying to develop. Are we developing a website? Then our requirements will be very different. Okay, then developing an application, okay, a mobile application and so on. So, or if you're doing a database or server, then we'll have to think through what kind of attacks can happen, and based on that, we'll have to come out with requirements. Okay, and then of course we'll have to pinpoint security threats and potential vulnerability. So these 2 points are connected. Okay, and then we have to quantify the threat and vulnerability criticality. If the intrusion happens, then what kind of intrusion will it be very serious, or what will be complexity of that? Okay, how vulnerable it will be, and so on. And based on that, find out what could be solutions. So all these are involved in threat modeling. Okay, so why do we do threat modeling? Because this is the first thing that we need to do when we are designing a software. Right in the beginning, a solution that we are, for example, we are designing a routing algorithm. Okay, then we'll have to think that what should be our requirement. When first thing that we do in software development cycle is that write down the requirements. It's like a story kind. The software should do the following. These are the functional objectives. These are functions it should achieve. It should do routing or whatever. And then there are performance objectives, and then you can write security objectives. Okay, all right. So there's a basic thing that we'll have to start with. So, and once we do, then it will help us to understand the threats. Okay, And based on that model, we can have security mechanism. We can think of what security mechanism we can have. And at the end, based on the model, we can verify the design. See, if you design a house, right? If you, when the house is constructed, then you have to verify that everything is working, or you call an expert. If you have valuables of, say, for example, 100 crores at home, or you're a businessman and then you have a lot of wealth coming in, then you can call security expert from outside, and they will audit the whole house and say that yeah, it is safe. And you must have seen some in some houses, in front of some houses, especially in places like Delhi and so on, there are security guards in front. Okay, why security guard is needed? And they must have done some analysis, threat analysis. Yes, I mean there is a possibility of a big theft. Okay, all right. And at the end, we can do testing based on this. So note that requirements are most important. Okay, based on that we design. Okay, so if there is a requirement for security, then also there is a design for security, and then there's a development. Okay, once these three are done, then there is a some kind of testing or audit. But testing is done, and then once testing is complete, is ready, is deployed, and then periodically we can do audit whether it's really working. Okay, so this the normal step one is software engineering practices, and the same thing we'll have to apply when we do threat modeling. Okay, and of course these things we know that we have to find out the reason why somebody is trying to attack us. Okay, and once we know the reason, then we can do proper planning. And of course the reasons are the same, they do it for money or politics or fun. Okay, all right. So now when we do threat planning, threat modeling, then we'll have to assume few things, right? So we cannot ever assume that the intruder or the attacker does not have any understanding. Okay, now today we will study one attack called APT later. Okay, in that, or even in when intrusion happens or attack happens, there is a planning of months. This whole team works on, criminal team of criminals work on how to intrude a big organization, how to attack a big organization, right? So it's not, you'll have to think there's a petty thief who is in next mohalla or village can come. And so these are the very smart people, and they are employed, of course, by many companies, because most of the thefts happen because of as part of organized crime. Okay, so attacker, we'll have to think attacker is a very smart team, and then that can interact with system without notice. Of course attacks don't happen with notice. Okay, so anytime our resources can be attacked. And then suppose we have a backend server or server, say for example consider a server of Amazon or whatever, right? Okay, then attacker is trying to get into that or break into that, then we'll know a lot of things about it, what the OS it's running, what are the vulnerabilities, what version of the software it's using. Okay, if say for example I mean for every software there's a continuous patches are given, right? New version, right? Even in Windows that you use, you'll find notices. If you use legal Windows, copies of Windows, you'll find notices, and then people keep finding vulnerabilities or performance improvement ideas, right? Or so the patches are given, and we have to apply patches every time, right? And most of us do that. Okay, so they know what version it's running. Okay, once they know about the hardware and software, then they know in that version what holes are there, because these are all published data, but many of us are lazy enough not to update our software to latest. Okay, and they can get lucky also, right? Because if they have to try say 1 million time, if they make 1 million attempt and they are, then they can get into it, get into the system, they will try 1 million times in different ways. Okay, so and then it's not just that from one point they will attack, they can attack it from multiple points. Okay, and this can be coordinated attack. All right, and they have the resources required to mount the attack. They have very sophisticated tool, they may have very fast servers and so on. All right, okay, so these are the normal process. So you find out what are the assets you want to protect. For example, in your campus, what are the assets one may want to protect from intruders? You may want to protect your, for example, your server rooms, or you may want to protect whatever, maybe labs and so on. All the assets we need to identify and then document that, how do they work. Okay, then decompose it, look at the parts of that, because the whole system can be very complex. For example, you say that lab security. What do you mean by lab security? There can be multiple. Then we have decompose a problem and see what are the servers and how they are connected, and what is the LAN and what is the internet connection. There can be multiple internet connections, so on. So we'll have to decompose the system into subsystems and then identify threats, document threats, read threats, and then take some action, right? Plan action on that. All right, so these are the normal steps. Threat modeling is usually the modeling of what kind of threats can be there in a system. That's it. Okay, and beyond that is the planning of how to mitigate those. Okay, any question?
No, sir.
Okay, so threat, note that it has to be done ahead of designing a system. Okay, second is trusted computing base, TCB, and don't confuse this TCB with something that we study in OS, which is threat control blocks. So this is trusted computing base. So what TCB is used in context of security is trusted computing base. Okay, what is TCP? So when we say that we have to make OS or computer system highly reliable, when you say that everything in the computer is highly reliable or trustworthy, not reliable but trustworthy, highly secure, then we are fooling ourselves. We cannot do that. Okay, because it has mobile handset has say 20 million lines of code. We cannot make all 20 million lines of code absolutely secure. Okay, so then what we do is that we will have to find out the components of system which are most important, which can be made absolutely secure. Okay, so now the security of the rest of thing depends on this trusted computing base. Now this is kind of closed circle of advisors with a politician, for example, right, which can 100% be trusted. So security of prime minister, there are there are 7 or 8 people, or maybe more than that, they walk along with the prime minister, right? The prime minister relies on them. Okay. Similarly, in a system, we can say there are few components in OS, for example, because you have done course on OS, few components which are to be 100% secure, which have to be secure, and based on that, security of other things depend. So what could be in OS which has to be part of TCB? Anyone?
Kernel space.
Yeah, I mean, usually kernel, very right. The whole kernel space has to be part of TCP, very right, which includes scheduler and many other, right? Very right. So the properties of TCP will be correctness, it has to work properly, completeness, cannot be bypassed, and security. Okay, so generally made to be very small, because if you're very big, then you cannot, it cannot be made fully secure. Okay, so the basic principle is keep it simple, right? OK's principle. So which of this is a trusted computing base in system 1, and this is the trusted computing base in system 2. So the proper design is this one, right? Which should be made as small as possible, which can be truly tested and checked. Okay, all right. So TCP in OS, okay, so trusted computing base usually contains, say for example, hardware. Okay, hardware is part of trusted computing base. If you know basic clock mechanism or CPU or you know some other components, clock, etc., can be tampered, then everything can be tampered, right? Then the kernel, as you rightly said, the kernel, system binaries, system configuration files, etc., set UID, root programs, etc., all these are part of trusted computing base. Okay. Now, part of this TCB is something called reference monitor. So reference monitor is part of the TCB, which is tamper-proof, always invoked, and small enough to be fully tested. And it, most important point is that it controls all software accesses to data objects or devices. Okay. So reference monitor verifies the requests allowed by the access control policy. So access control policy will say that if for example, the owner, okay, or the one who has maximum privileges is trying to do something, then the policy will check the person is allowed to read, write, execute, or whatever. Okay, while a common user is trying to do something in the system, the person may be allowed to do only reading, that too in certain on certain objects, right? We will study later access control list, etc. But right now, just remember that all the requests that are going through, all the requests for resource accesses or device accesses will go through reference monitor. So now assume you are a user, and then you have to make a request for an object. What are you going to do? What in from OS course knowledge, what are we going to do? A user process can go into system through something. What was that? You studied that, right? We need system calls. Okay, without system calls you cannot go inside, right? Whether it's a user library that uses system calls, or you directly use system call, user process, system call. So all system calls now has to go through reference monitor. Okay, so this is a reference monitor which is part of TCB, which is of course part of, so this is a TCB, and then TCB is of course part of usually kernel. Not necessarily everything in kernel we will put in TCB, but most important things. So nowadays, you know, I mean, the lightweight kernels that we have not covered in the course, part of the kernel also runs in user space, which are not really necessary to be under control of OS. Okay. Okay, so now the question is that we have studied OS, but we didn't study this point, of course. So now for Linux, you find out there's something called Linux security module, which is nothing but reference monitor. So just Google it or find out from Linux books what is the role of reference monitor. Okay. So next thing is that, you create security. When you create security, the overall security of system depends on the weakest link. Okay. Okay. So you may, for example, you have a house. Okay, this is the boundary of the house, and this is the house. Okay, and you have gate. Okay, and some place, and you may want to have very heavy gate here, but at the places your the boundary wall is kind of broken. So what is the security of whatever the lock and gate you put in here? Any intruder can get in from inside, right? Whatever security guard you put in the campus of IIT Goa, and there are many entrances, and your wall is broken, boundary wall is broken, anybody can enter from anywhere. So what so the security, then overall campus, you can say, depends on the weakest link. Okay, all right. So a thief or criminal will always try to find the weakest link in your system. Even a petty thief who wants to get into an independent house will see what is the best possible way. If the door seems to be perfect and very strong, and big lock is there, and there is a difficulty in breaking the lock, etc., we'll see, can I enter from back door or from the balcony, or the grills are not there in the house, can I break windows? So weakest link is something that is exploited often, right? And overall security of system depends on the weakest link. So who's the weakest link in security chain? What is the two main causes of security breaks? First is that human beings, they become the weakest link in the security chain. Of course, emails are the next one. We get so many emails, and without thinking, we double click on attachments, and that allows intruders to come into the house. Okay. Next point is that, okay, human factor. Why human beings are the weakest in the security chain? So this is the cartoon that most of the organizations, most of threats happen because of the insider threats, right? So it's the insider who knows about the system, pass on the information to external entity, or he or she himself can attack the system. Okay, that's one way of looking at it, right? Second is that your bank has created a beautiful security system, but you as a consumer are not careful about setting your password. Then bank can't do much about it. Or you, whatever password you have set, you have given it to your friends and relatives to use, right? And they have leaked it somewhere, right? So these are the human problems, right? Despite knowing that passwords need to be long enough such that breaking of the password by password are stored in a system or server in bank using hashed mechanism. Okay, we'll study hashing later. Okay, so which is kind of encrypted, in some sense encrypted, right? So when data breaches happen, criminals get all hash password. If the hash length of the hash, or if the password is very simple, the hashes are easily can be broken, or they can easily find out from the hash data what is the password. Okay, and difficulty goes on if the password is more complex, is a combination of all the characters and a special character and lower upper character and numbers and so on. Even the fastest computer will take years to break it. That's the reason banks and so on always insist that password length has to be minimum 8 with some special characters and so on. such that if there's a breach, then it's easy to break. Despite that, most of the people use, take simple as possible. They will use their name and put, if they say that some numbers are there, put their date of birth and then some special character, which is the first in the line, which could be on top line, for example, star or whatever, or at the rate or whatever. Okay. So, and then use their son's name, daughter's name. So all these tricks are known to criminals, and they will first start attempting breaking of your hash password using these techniques, right? Okay. So when users like convenience, right, most popular pin, 6-digit pin is 123456. Even many of us use that. Okay, despite knowing that if somebody wants to get into your ATM account, they will use 123456. Okay. So the users note that they want convenience. Second is that if security system is unusable, it will be unused. When we design a security system, we can't make it very complex. It has to be simple enough that people can use it. Otherwise, no one will use it, right? And then many of us find ways to subvert security system, which makes their lives easier. This is another foolish thing, right? You have hired a security guard, like campus where I live. We have, in gate, out gate. In gate, there are 3-4 security guards. They check everyone who gets into the campus, and there are about 3,000 people who live in the campus. Of course, security guards cannot know everyone, but yet when some residents come in and the security guards ask them questions about them, then they become angry. We live here, why you're asking the question? But there's a job of security guard to ask the question about who is the culprit here. We are the culprit. Okay. So we as a human being find ways to subvert security system. That makes the life easier. My life is easy if I just walk into the gate, nobody noticing me. But that's not the right thing. And then programmer makes huge amount of mistakes. Okay, and they continue to make the mistakes which they have made. Okay, for example, we know how pointers should be used. Still, people make foolish designs of use of pointers. Okay, all right. And then, of course, people get tricked by social engineering. As we mentioned earlier, social engineering is one of the biggest reasons for cyber threats, right? Social engineering, for example, will, like smokers example or backdoor example, one can get into any company, almost any company, but is still getting. Okay. So social engineering tricks is somebody calls you and says that I am your friend's friend and I need some money. Okay, or somebody can trick you by, like, for credit card information and so on. They say you have loyalty points available, and then give me your when OTP comes, share the OTP. Okay, so these are the tricks where because we human being trust each other. Okay, and we normally don't doubt. These cyber criminals use our psychology to fool us. Okay. So now the last point is that there is no patch for human stupidity. Okay, the patch is, software engineering, we say patch is given to fix a problem, security problem or any other malfunction or any bug. Patches are provided. And there's no patch for us, right? Because most of us remain as stupid as we were. So for example, many of us received, when we are trying to access or sending an email on internet, some information on internet, we get this warning signal. Okay, do you want to continue? And then many of us will say in future, we'll tick on this. Future, don't show this message. Now what you're disabling the security system, right? Rather than thinking that why it's telling. Similarly, in the browser, nowadays most of the browser will warn you going to a site. Okay, the site may not have HTTPS or encryption mechanisms and so on, browser, and still we want to go there. You say, yeah, okay, then it's a foolish thing, right? Similarly, you can get the box like this. We'll say that if available, click checkbox to avoid bother again, because there is some security warning, and we'll say yes. Similarly, we'll study certificates, and then you are going to a site and that certificate of that site is expired. Okay, or it's not correct certificate. So it says the browser doesn't recognize the certificate authority that issued the certificate. Okay, we'll study how certificates work. But in general, based on certificate, there is a trust component that our browser has that is coming from trusted source. Okay, and certificates are issued by certification authorities, some authorities. So now, there's a wrong certificate or is a malicious certificate created by cyber criminals and it's coming to us, and yet we accept it. Okay, and the OS will ask, OS will not say that no, it cannot take that stand. So I will ask you, do you want to accept this certificate or you accept this permanently? And most of the people take on that. Okay, so these are the things these are the weak points that we have. All right. Okay, it's another example. Please go through it. Any question? No? Okay, a few more points left out, right? Security is economics. This point we have studied already. Security doesn't come free. Okay. Okay, and no system is 100% secure against all attacks. So we can't think of developing a system which can be protected against all possible attacks. So system only needs to, we'll have to then, when we are doing threat planning, then we'll have to think what part of the system needs to be protected, or system needs to be protected against what level of attacks. Okay, if I am running a small business, a grocery shop, and if I have website, okay, I may not want the best possible security for myself, because even thieves, when they do analysis, they will not find me very attractive target, because I cannot pay, even if my whole business, my website is encrypted and so on. Anyway, my business is running without website also, so I'm fine with that, right? So while if I am running e-business like Amazon or Flipkart or eBay or whatever, then level of attacks on me or my systems could be very of different order altogether, because there are a lot of stakes. If somebody brings down or encrypts whole or brings down the website of very important company, then they can claim millions of dollars to undo it. Okay, so when we want to have more security, we'll have to spend more money. Okay, so because security doesn't come free, and then we'll have to do cost benefit analysis. Okay, the cost of your defense should be less than the cost of attack that's happening. Okay, there's the ideal case. Cost of attack is not the cost to attacker. The benefit, okay, the benefit by defense, the cost required to defending something, should be less than the cost of the asset in some sense. Okay, and becomes very clear that don't put $10 lock to protect $1 item. Okay, all right. So this is another example here. If you have to buy a safe, right, physical safe, which we call a lockers, right, in home. Okay, so if you buy a safe, what kind of safe you are going to buy? So this first safe is TL15 kind. So this is security. What do you call that? Some numbers are given for security levels. So if it is TL15, it will cost about $3,000 to buy, and will take 15 minutes for common to break with the common tools, right? And if you buy TL30, it will cost you $4,500. It will take 30 minutes to break with common tool. And if you buy TL30, it will cost $10,000 and 30 minutes to break with common tools and cutting torch. And if you buy TL60 kind of safe, it will cost you more than 50K. It will take 1 hour for criminals to cut it with cutting torch and 4 rounds of explosives. Now the question is that if you're running a company or shop, what kind of these locks would you like to have? Because at the end of the day, you'll have to put some money into it. Okay, it totally depends on your business. Okay, so cost of security should be less than something that is inside that safe, for example. So you are not going to buy a safe which costs 50K, and if you're just putting 1K or 10K rupees in it. Okay, all right. Okay. So see, takeaway, important point is security is economics. Okay. Okay, for example, security companies are supposed to detect home break-ins, right? So ADT is company which has a lot of gadgets and so on. So in doesn't happen in India, but in US, for example, you can give contract for your home security to a company. Okay. Now the problem with all this is there are too many false alarms. Okay, and many of these alarms go unanswered. Okay, now this causes different set of problem, right? Because then people don't believe in security system. Okay, so another psychological aspect of this, that if you put this kind of sign in front of the house, what is the advantage? Okay, so one advantage that placing inside will deter or discourage criminals to get into house, because they know this house has alarm. Okay, so you can use this method, and even if you don't have a dog and you have independent house, put this sign in front without keeping away. Keeping a dog is expensive process, right? You'll have to spend few thousands every month, maybe 7,000-8,000 every month to keep a dog. If you want to avoid that expense and you have enough, if you still want security, put this sign. So burglars who do not know you, who's not your friends and relatives, can always will look at this sign and will prefer to go to house which does not have this sign. Okay. All right. Any question? Okay. So the last one is that very often we cannot protect. Okay, but what is necessary that we need to detect it? Example could be, there can be malware in your mobile, and they will remain in your mobile for years, and they can do huge amount of damage by passing on your information to outside world. Now, while you may not have any protection system, but if you know that, first thing is that you should know that there is a malware inside your mobile. and then you can do something about it. You maybe you change the version of the software and something around it, right? So detection is very important, even if you can't prevent it. Okay, so there are the steps. For example, first is deter the attack before it happens, like putting a sign or having a dog and putting a sign, or so on so forth, right? And then prevention. If the attack happens, then it has to prevent. Like we have firewalls and some other kind of securities in our system, right? But something very dangerous is that if the attack happens, then we do not know about it, right? We should know that attack has happened. Okay, so if you cannot stop attack from happening, you should at least be able to know that attack has happened, and then you can respond. Okay, so once you know attack has happened, you should of course respond. And detection without response, of course, is pointless. Although system is not powerful enough to protect itself, but at least it should be good enough to find out there has been an attack, and then there is a response of that, right? And then response is of course mitigation and recovery, and that can be planned in different ways. All right. Okay, there is a possible that there's a detection, no response. An example is bitcoins, right? In bitcoins, you is just hashed passwords that you have. That's it. If you lose that password, then everything is gone and you cannot recover it. Okay. All right. So read this. Now to summarize, we have studied few points uh, about security, which are really important. Okay. First thing is that in order to secure anything, we need to have a threat model. Okay, and then part of the system that we're designing must be absolutely trustworthy, that we call a TCB, trusting computing base, which is small, extremely reliable, and totally safe. And then criminals always look for the weakest link, and in general, weakest link in a system or any security system are human beings. Okay, and of course, email is another main culprit, right? The next point that discusses security doesn't come free. It requires money and time, and it's nothing but economics. You cannot secure a system. If you want to secure a system, it should be worth securing. And how much money you are putting in security must surely be less than something that you want to secure. Okay. And if one is not able to prevent security breaches, then one must detect it. If there is an attack in the campus, and we cannot prevent the attack, we don't have enough security guards and mechanisms, then we must at least find it out, and then we can respond. And the timely response is important. All right. Okay, so that's all. Any question? All right, then. Thank you. See you on Monday. Bye.